now come to the, should be the last session of the workshop. We have a saying in Chinese that 好戏在后头 or 亚洲 house. That means, in theatrical term, that means the best play comes in the last. So we'll have an excellent play at this session. We have five panelists for this session. It is supposed to be a roundtable session. Unfortunately, we don't have a roundtable yet. So the speakers will be facing the audience, but I hope that we will have a very smooth communication among ourselves. Let me invite our first speaker, Professor Lisa Yoneyama, to speak. Professor Yoneyama received her BA in German Language Studies and MA in International Relations at Sophia University, Tokyo, and PhD in Cultural Anthropology at Stanford University, California. She has been a member of the department since 1992 and taught Culture Studies, US, Japan Studies, Asian American Studies, and Critical Gender Studies. Her research interests center on the history and memory of war and colonialism, gender and militarism, and the cultural dimensions of transnationalism, new colonialism, and the Cold War and post-Cold War U.S. relations with Asia. She has written quite a number of essays and articles, but let me, probably I should skip that part. I will simply mention a few titles of her book. Hiroshima Traces, Time, Space, and Dialectics of Memory, which came out in 1999. Her second book, Violence, War, Redress, The Politics of Multiculturalism, published in 2003 in Japan. This is in Japanese. And she also co-edited a book which came out from Duke University Press in 2001, entitled Perilous Memories, Politics of Remembering the Asia-Pacific War. She is currently working on a third book project, tentatively titled Cold War Ruins, Feminism, Colonialism, and the Americanization of Historical Justice. In that book, she tried to critically explores Cold War management of knowledge and the questions of justice, feminism, anti-colonialism, and the location of Asian America. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you Professor Lisa Yoneyama.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very detailed introduction. And I'd like to first of all thank Andy and the Institute for having me. I was actually invited to another university, NCTU, National Transportation University. Forthcoming book, and in it, the project is really sort of conceived in terms of trans-Pacific, inter-Asia kind of approach to issue of redressing Japanese war crimes as well as Cold War violence immediately after World War II. So this workshop, the concept of this workshop, and what I'm currently interested in, very much speak to each other. So I'm very, very grateful and appreciative of this opportunity. So thank you very much. And I want to begin by also thanking the fascinating opening, welcoming remark by Dr. Shan, in which basically you did everything that questions, but I want to begin my remarks by going back to your opening remarks where you list some of the core questions that this session is meant to address. And in it, you opening remark list several questions, but for instance, how do we understand the Asian America, Asia connectedness as conditioned by transnational flows of culture, labor, commodity, capital, and affect? What is the significance of Asian American studies in Asia? And what critical work does it do in respective national context as it may relate to issues of nationalism, minority struggles, and war memories? How does local bound and transnational frame scholarship in Asia contribute to Asian American studies in a global context, and more? So these are the kind of questions that I think were in a very lively way, were discussed in the last 2 days. And what I'd like to, and many of the, I guess, issues that Roundtable participants are supposed to address were already taken up by many of the comments and questions earlier. So I'm not sure how much I can really add, but as a way of opening up, I guess, the question and answers and more discussions after this roundtable, I'd like to share the following thoughts. One is really to go back to the title of this session, Asian American Studies in Asia. And I guess you can think of different ways in which you, to approach this concept, but so Asian American Studies sort of institutional development in Asia or practice in Asia, that's one dimension of it. But the other, as Dr. Shan's remark succinctly noted, it is also about traveling, right? Traveling of Asian American Studies practice in North America, US and Canada, and into the space of Asia. And my comment is really more, sort of looking at the latter meaning of the title of the conference, Asian American Studies in travel of that to Asia. So when you think about traveling of Asian American Studies, I like to think of it as Asian American Studies in Asia as participating in particular a process of knowledge production. I think it's especially important to think about Asian American Studies or any kind of discourse or intellectual practices, cultural work. It is important to look at the process of knowledge distribution, production, and the politics behind it. And this is a sort of issue that came out yesterday in the final session. But when you address these questions in terms of knowledge production, inevitably we will be talking about institutionalization, which came up yesterday, but also a question of knowledge apparatus and power. So that's the sort of angle that I like to bring in to our final discussion. I think in the earlier comment that I made, one of the comments I made, I don't think you can deny the fact that despite the radical potential at the formative, emergent moment of Asian American critique, when it became Asian American Studies, particularly in the United States, I think it did serve as a kind of management of volatile